Happy Tuesday, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Rocketeer Minute, where each and every day, Monday through Friday, we go over 1 minute of the greatest adventure movie Walt Disney's ever made, the 1991 Joe Johnston-directed feature, The Rocketeer. I'm one of your hosts, Jim O'Kane of TVDads.com.
And I'm Hal Bryan, an airplane nerd from the Experimental Aircraft Association here in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Now, Jim, as we move in here to minute 87, we arrive at a very special location. And in honor of that location, of course, the famous Griffith Park Observatory, the Griffith Observatory at Griffith Park. What a privilege it is for us to be able to welcome the director of the Griffith Observatory, an astronomer, a researcher, a prolific writer, a man with an amazing resume. Welcome, Dr. Ed Krupp.
Thanks very much, and I wish I could say I also have a jetpack, but I don't.
Well,
we know people.
Yes, we know people. In fact, we even know people who make them that work. If you don't mind flying for 10 minutes or less, but that's a start.
Yeah.
I know Griffith Park. The observatory and the grounds have been the site of so many different things. I mean, everything from like Bronson Canyon and the Bat Cave to I mean, you could probably list the movies off better than I can. But I'm just thinking of Rebel Without a Cause, Bowfinger.
And the old Gene Autry Phantom Empire.
That was the first. That one actually was filmed before the place opened.
Wow, really?
Yeah, and so it's an indicator of the long-standing bond between Griffith Observatory and Hollywood, and it's obvious to people in a sense that of course it's a set for Hollywood and has been used over and over again. But the influence between the observatory and Hollywood can actually be traced over the years. Hollywood's affected the observatory, and the observatory has affected Hollywood in terms of how it goes about telling its stories. And Rebel Without a Cause, you mentioned a moment ago, the key there is that after decades of the observatory starring in motion pictures, in Rebel Without a Cause, the observatory finally played Griffith Observatory.
Wow, it's fantastic, and it does get a nod here as itself too.
Oh,
in our movie. Which,
no question in the Rocketeer. I mean that was the place of key events, and of course the observatory had to once again be that point of concentration in Hollywood.
Well, you were there. You were present at the filming of this particular film.
I certainly was around there at the time. In fact, more than the filming, the whole issue of negotiating the filming, of making it possible to film at the observatory. It's not so simple as one might think. Because we're operating every day practically, closed 1 day a week, and with an average attendance of now about 1.5 million. Filming is a serious interruption, and the Rocketeer was even more serious than normal. So setting out to actually make arrangements for that and contract for that was tricky, and then of course it was major production here on the grounds.
I know I've been to your beautiful observatory many times, and one thing that you are kind of in short supply of is parking. And I'm just imagining on a typical movie production, there's all the trucks and the makeup trailers and all that other stuff and the lights and things. Just trying to find a place to put all that stuff to get ready for the shoot must have been a logistics nightmare.
Yeah, the place is isolated on a hilltop and a postage stamp piece of property at that. So you're quite right. The parking is limited. Now that does not mean, in fact, it's inadequate for a film production. There's always been enough room for film production, but it requires closing the facility, or at least much of it, on the hilltop, particularly for a big production like this, where the entire public parking lot has to be taken over by all the vehicles you just described.
Yeah, it must have been quite a thing. And then get them all out of the way while they're shooting. I mean, it is a beautiful scene. I was wondering, you say that you are closed 1 night a week, which I'm assuming is where you try to aim the movie shoots that are done at night, at least, I would think.
Well, actually, almost all movie shots are scheduled for Mondays when the observatory is normally closed. There are sometimes exceptions, and if you wind up as someone interested in producing a film and going to the observatory's website and having a look at the rules and regulations and all of that, you'll see we discourage filming at other times, try to funnel it all into Mondays, and even not all those Mondays are available. So it's a limited resource, but there have been occasions when filming has taken place at other times, which means closing to the public. And of course, that's what happened with the Rocketeer. It was a major impact on public access at the building.
How many nights were you out, or how many days and nights? I would think.
That was a full week.
Wow.
That was kind of unprecedented at the time. I had already been used to accommodating film productions, but nothing on the scale of a full week being needed. And that's not only difficult for an institution, but something like Griffith Park, which is open to the public, and of course you've got trails and roads and all other kinds of ways of accessing here, and all of that's got to be controlled. It's not an easy prospect from the point of view of security when you're filming.
I would imagine, and then there's so many ripples that go out from there. I'm assuming that you have a large schedule set up with schools and tourist buses and things like that, where you have a lot of people that are normally showing up on long scheduled events. So that must have been a lot of moving around too.
Exactly right. You try to peg a time for that where there is minimum impact, and if you have enough warning in advance, and for something like this we actually did. There was, because this was such a big production, planning was in place long before anybody showed up on the grounds, of course, and that meant that you could juggle the schedule a bit in order to accommodate it once it was determined that this was going to go forward.
Would you say that this is the most complicated production that you've had at the place in your term there?
You know, that's actually a reasonable question, and it's not one that I normally think about, certainly from the perspective of how much time it took, and therefore how many resources were deployed on the grounds by the film company. It probably was the most complex that we've ever done. I've seen some pretty complicated things take place up here, but not over such an extended period of time.
When I know I've read through some of your rules and regs about what kind of a film production you can do up there, and I noticed that a couple of things were waived, and most notably smoke and flame effects, which you generally I would imagine when you're in a place like Griffith Park, you really don't want to get anywhere near fire in a location like that.
Yeah, and sometimes those things are actually permissible. I mean, there are obviously the kinds of activities up here, not just filming, where you've got to do something unusual. We don't do crazy things. You know, we don't shoot off fireworks in Griffith Park and light the place on fire. But in fact, you have professionals at every level. The LA Fire Department, of course, is up here in force for filming. And so as a consequence, some pretty interesting things have happened in production, but normally we try to discourage it. And of course, anything that has any chance of spreading beyond a confined area just is not permitted. We're very sensitive to aerial activity as well, and it's not so much that there's really a problem with aerial, but you've got a monumental landmark building here, and it's you just don't take chances. I mean, it's not worth taking chances. It's sort of like, would you land around the Washington Monument? Well, sometimes people do, but is that really a good idea? I'm not sure. So. Yeah.
Well, actually, let's talk about your beautiful edifice there. It was founded by a fellow named Griffith W. Griffin. From what I understand, he was
Griffith J. Griffith.
Griffith J. Griffith. Excuse me.
I think we're thinking of D.W. Griffith.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
Very different guy, but
different.
But
Different.
This Griffith had a little bit of controversy in his life as well. But more, I think it's more important that he's remembered for this amazing gift.
Yeah, it's a kind of extraordinary story. Griffith J. Griffith, quite distinct from D.W. Griffith, but an easy mistake to make. And I mean, in my youth, I made the same mistake. You know, the Griffith that you know is D.W. From Hollywood and all. But Griffith J. Griffith was an entrepreneur in the West, an immigrant as a kid from Wales, and as he became a young man, started working, moving west as a reporter, and gradually found himself as an investor in various kinds of industry, mining, cattle and such, and became wealthy and purchased land in the Los Angeles area. And he was interested in a lot of things, including science. And he had a sensibility about the parkland. He owned all of this Los Feliz Rancho and made the gift of the park to the city of Los Angeles, which really didn't want it at the time. It was well outside the city limits then, but was accepted. And then also had this notion of a public observatory. We tend to take it for granted today, the era of planetaria and public astronomy and such. But back then, it was a pioneering kind of a notion. A few things have been done, but not many. But Griffith had some very specific ideas and left money in his will for not only the construction of Griffith Observatory in the Greek Theater below us, but he had ideas about what it should be and how it should be that ultimately were translated into the architecture and the design of the building.
I really enjoy being. It is such a work of art when you go through the middle of your building with the alcoves showing different. I can't describe this adequately. That the different areas of astronomy and physics and chemistry and just science in general. Those little niches of focus.
The original historic level of the building is actually what it was. There's more space now there because we did this major $93 million renovation and expansion completed in 2006. But on the historic level, you have these alcoves that were designed into the architecture of the original building, and they did house, just as you said, displays, demonstrations of important physical and scientific principles. And because they're such a part of the architecture, when we did the redevelopment of the observatory, we had a lot of this historic fabric that not only did we have to save it, but we wanted to save it. And so that real estate has been remapped in all new exhibits, but ones that tell, again, a kind of a story about our experience with the sky.
It's a combination. I mean, you are overlooking Hollywood, and it's a beautiful mix of science and, for lack of a better word, entertainment. It's a very engrossing day that you can spend at your observatory, and night as well. With you still have public viewings with the telescope there?
Oh yeah. In fact, the Zeiss 12-inch refractor, not the biggest telescope in the world, but in fact more people have looked through that telescope than any other telescope on the planet. And
Really?
we deploy other telescopes, of course, equally respectable, but not with as long a history as that, on the front lawn every night. So you have exhibits, telescopes, other instruments that demonstrate how the sky and the universe works on a daily basis for people to come here. And of course, the building is free, as Griffith, in fact, originally intended. The only thing for which there is a charge at the observatory proper is the planetarium show, and frankly, it's the cheapest in the world, so short of free. So it's all been in keeping with the original gift that Griffith gave to the city.
I would imagine that you have the most desired window office of any place in Los Angeles. That is such a fantastic vista from your backyard there.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
You make a couple of interesting points. One of which has to do with just how people thought of the observatory when we had to close in 2002. For 5 years, the place was closed while we did this major restoration because the place had been loved to death. It was just worn out. And I was asked by news media, particularly television, what do you think people are going to miss the most? And I never blinked. I said the view, because people come here for the view, and that's not a shallow thing. View is incredibly important. I mean, that's what astronomy is all about, is getting the view, because the view creates perspective, and that view of Earth and sky and the horizon is in its way every bit as important as the view of the uttermost distant elements of the cosmos. It tells us something about who we are and where we are and what we're doing. So the view is not just a pretty picture. It really is one of those things that helps explain what we're about. So the view is part of it, and you're quite right. My old office, which I had to abandon when we did the redesign of the building, had a spectacular window. It wasn't huge. It was a normal window, but it was wonderfully open to the west. We have a ideal western horizon here. You can see the entire span of the year, from the summer sunset to the winter sunset and back again. And I did not want to leave that window, but I can tell you we have a lot of other good windows now, and I'm sitting right in front of one and just look out and see the whole expanse of the Los Angeles basin out before me.
Oh, fantastic. Wow.
So now, Dr. Krupp, as I understand, the observatory opened in 35, and you said that Phantom Empire, which came out, I think was released maybe early 35, so that was actually shot before the film, or excuse me, before the observatory had opened.
That's
is that
correct.
Okay. So our film here is taking place in 38, so in this sense, the observatory would be, would be about 3 years old, so it would be a sort of fairly new thing. Maybe sort of a two-part question. First of all, is there anything that you notice in this? Is there anything that has changed so drastically about the exterior or any part of the grounds that we see that would have been different in 38 versus 91 when the movie was shot?
No, very good question, and obviously it was important to Disney and the people making the film as well. But part of the charm of the observatory is, especially from the perspective of the exterior, I guess you'd say that profile that the building presents and just its architecture as well is virtually unchanged. Now there's foliage. I mean, if you looked at the earliest pictures of the building right when it opened, it was pretty bare on the grounds and all. But I mean, there was grass and there were plants, and so in the Rocketeer, it looks very much like it's supposed to look. Those small kinds of differences really would require a very careful examination of different photographs, and that's a sensibility that persists even to today. When we were doing the master plan for the renovation of the observatory, we knew that it was important to make the experience essentially the same, that when people encountered the observatory, it had to look familiar to them because it is, in fact, the hood ornament of Los Angeles and an icon in the landscape. So, yeah, the integrity of the image in the Rocketeer is sound, and certainly, it's fun to look at that film again, too, because the building looks great in it. The astronomer's monument around which he comes, where the sundial is located there, and that spotlighting of Galileo's face in the sculpture, and then the facade of the building. All of that is just classic Griffith Observatory.
What was the astronomer's monument there in 38?
Oh,
Would
yeah.
It have been...
Yeah, definitely. That actually, the astronomer's monument was, in a sense, a late addition to the planning of the observatory. It was not part of the original design, but it was one of the few things that is attributable to what we would now call the WPA, Works Projects Administration, that was taking place at that time in the wake still of the Great Depression. That was funded and actually had a ceremony for its opening very close to the time of the opening of the observatory. So it's really been there from the beginning.
Now, when this minute opens, we see the astronomer's monument there, the close-up of the heads. Is that, am I right, that's Herschel, Newton, and Kepler?
Yeah, I think actually the image that you see most in that is Galileo, but in fact, as you go around the monument, you're quite right. You do see Herschel, you do see Newton, you do see Kepler, and then also you pick up Copernicus, of course, and Galileo, and then Hipparchus, not a name that's known to many people, but extremely important in the early history of astronomy. Even William Herschel is not that well known to many people, but he did discover the seventh planet, and in fact opened up the universe to the galaxy of stars with his so-called stargazing.
Well, and it's interesting, too, Herschel seems to be well recognized within NASA. When you read a bit about him online, you find lots of his sort of missions and places named after him. And so you see a lot of homage there, but you're absolutely right. As a total layperson when it comes to this sort of thing, his was not a name that resonated that strongly with me. I'm not the rocket scientist that Jim is. But and then Hipparchus was not a name I've come across before. I'm ashamed to admit.
But there you go. That's why we have an astronomer's monument. So.
Very good. Well, sir, it's working.
Yeah.
And your comment about Griffith Park being the hood ornament of L.A., that was number one. That was brilliant. Number two, I guess that means the astronomer's monument is sort of the hood ornament of Griffith Park because it has that. It sits right out front there.
It's right out in front, and people, when you think about it, it's not just the building that we have to preserve for that experience. People have to work to get here. I mean, you got to come through the city, you got to come uphill, and when you get there, the experience of getting here needs to be preserved. And then, of course, that great vista. When you get up to this point and look out, you don't want to be obstructing the view. And while there is much to be said around the city for making sure there are lots of trees planted in shade, here at the hilltop, we need an open view. That's what it's all about, observing.
I can vouch for you on when you're heading up the hill there, and what I always think of as the Toontown Tunnel. Climbing out of there, and just as you come around the big horseshoe there, and there's the big reveal, especially at night. It's just such a fantastic feeling to see. It's like going to Disneyland, only it's a real building here. And it's nice watching in this film. If I'm correct, that big Rolls Royce that pulls up is actually going the wrong way, isn't it? It's counterclockwise, I think.
No, it's actually okay. Although most vehicles are never permitted where that one went, but that is a driveway. That's a service driveway. Leads to what would be called the East Loading Area, but inside the building we call it the James Dean Memorial Loading Area, where the famous punctured tires and crowbar business took place. So service vehicles do go up there, and the rest now the road is a one-way loop, but in fact in the 30s and when the Rocketeer was made, it was a two-way road.
Oh, okay. It's such a great look on there, and the camera just slowly moving down, and Lothar getting out of the cab. Were you there that night of that particular shot? Or?
No, I actually was not present, and I'm normally not present at the times of actual filming. As you probably know, film production is an incredibly slow process that just goes on interminably, and I was here during the days. As usual, dealing with observatory business and for the most part just monitoring, particularly with other staff members. Okay, are we all right? Is everything intact? Have we broken anything? And so on. So I actually wasn't present. And also, the truth is that it's not very helpful to production companies to have observatory staff members all over the place. We have key people out there, but we try not to pepper the place with spectators because they're doing a job as well.
I understand. Do you have? I would imagine there's somebody in your organization that is like the film liaison.
No question. That belongs to the operations wing of the observatory, and when you need to explore filming here or actually follow through and get a date and arrange it, we have key staff members, starting with our operations manager, who actually facilitate that process.
So, a quick question from me that I've always been curious about. I would imagine, and maybe this is better suited for your operations people, so if I'm putting you on the spot, I do apologize, but you obviously have to think of the observatory's image and its reputation and its status as a landmark. Is it often that a production company comes to you and wants to use the site in a certain way, and you have to say no?
It's not often because first it's expensive to use the place.
Right.
We do charge for that, and the access is very limited because there aren't that many dates that are available. I mean, this place is open to the public most of the time,
sure,
and into the night and weekends and all, and so the options for that tend to limit rather naturally a lot of the inquiries that are made. But we do require a review of the detailed script of what is actually going to take place, both from the point of view of dialogue and how the place is treated. It's a tricky little business in terms of how far it's even appropriate to go in impeding what you'd regard as free expression. I mean,
sure,
we're a government institution, and we don't go around censoring people's productions in that way, but we do pay attention to make sure that really atrocious things do not happen, and things that aren't permitted to take place don't happen. So it's a fine line that, and I wind up being one of the people that reviews everything when something is proposed.
That's very interesting.
Wow. Well, I'd like to pick up this conversation a little bit more tomorrow. We'll talk. We get another great view of Griffith, the observatory. But let's hold off. While you don't want to run everybody's batteries down while they're on their treadmills listening to the show. But we'll be back tomorrow. For those of you who would like to talk about this a little bit more on social media, we're of course always available at the regular sites. Twitter, you can find us at Rocketeer Minute. Facebook, facebook.com/Rocketeer Minute. The great big site, RocketeerMinute.com, where you can catch up on previous episodes. And if we've already finished this whole series, you can catch up on future episodes. You find us on iTunes or Google Play just by typing in Rocketeer Minute and clicking search, and you'll find us there. You can subscribe and get this delivered every day, Monday through Friday. So we'll pick this up and talk more about Griffith Park here tomorrow on the Rocketeer Minute. So until next time, over and out.